Let's make sense of this.
Let's make sense.
Sensemakers.
Hey guys, I'm Keith. Last day of the TC25 here with David Spezia. I met him yesterday. He is an architect or
A distinguished architect in our sales org for data and AI.
a distinguished architect in the Salesforce Tableau org for AI. But the key differentiator is David has been with the Tableau community since very long back. We were talking last night about your first Tableau conference here in San Diego.
Yes, 2012.
The manner in which they had every version of Tableau on a different laptop, right? And one of the most kind of enlivening things for me from that conversation was to find a new person who I hadn't met before, who's been with Tableau as long as you have, but who now knows everything about Data Cloud. And I myself have not. I joined the Tableau community at version 8.
Nice.
So I go somewhat back, but not as far back as you. And I know next to nothing about Data Cloud, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's a point of concern for me because the entire Tableau ethos has moved in this direction.
Yep.
And I feel like I missed the boat a little bit. And as much as I go booth to booth, I don't necessarily have the ability to get my fingers on understanding what's going on in there. So for me, if you wouldn't mind, Data Cloud 101, what is that thing?
Yeah, definitely. Data Cloud is the pan Salesforce substrate for data, right? And so typically, when it comes to Salesforce, knowing anything about Salesforce's database has been deliberately abstracted away from the user since 26 years ago. When
No
they first
software.
No software, like that whole ethos. And so when we think about Salesforce, even 26 years ago, and I still remember my first interaction with it, was I needed to add a field about what Topaz unit my dealerships had for capturing signatures, because I was working at an e-contracting platform, and that was back in 2005. And I'm like, I need to add a field to dealership for Topaz unit. And my buddy Jason's like, yeah, just add it here. I'm like, okay, but now I need to add it to the database. I need to add it to the middle tier. All we did was put it in the UI.
Right, I got to go manually, down the stack, insert this
My
thing,
full
so
stack developer.
all the layers know about it.
Yep.
Right.
And he's like, no. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I just need to put it on this report now. Just drag, drop, click, done. Because the controller propagates that change to the UI, it propagates the change down to the database. And they do that through this S object model. And so Data Cloud is a way for S objects that live natively in Salesforce clouds to come down to one area, and we can combine them, we can unify them, so I can have contacts for many different Salesforce orgs or leads, and I can unify an individual there. And that allows me then to share that unified data set out to Marketing Cloud, out to Service Cloud, out to Sales Cloud, and Analytics. And so as the company is moving in this direction to have Data Cloud as our pan Salesforce substrate, as we develop new tooling, that new tooling is developed on Data Cloud as the database, not on Oracle as the database. We want to dog food our own database. And so we had Salesforce's Audiences 360, a pure CDP play within our Marketing Cloud, was the first kind of database thing that we had.
So that was the lead into the Data Cloud. Is that the end game, or is there more to come?
There's a lot more to come. I mean, that's where we started, and then it evolved into Genie. And when it evolved into Genie, this is when I got involved with Data Cloud.
Okay.
I was working at a little company out in San Mateo called Snowflake at the time.
Yeah.
And I was doing a lot of our OEM relationships, because that sales cycle is just different than it is with a customer, right? Because we have to talk to product managers, we've got to have release cycles, the data's got to have certain levels of multi-tenancy to it. How do you want to apply your multi-tenancy? And through this, I was able to work with the Salesforce team, along with many, many other individuals at Snowflake and at Salesforce, to develop the first zero-copy connector down into Snowflake.
Right, okay, so Snowflake's this small little org,
Yeah.
Data Cloud's this other thing, and you're on the project that's beginning the initiation of this zero copy concept.
Yes.
In order to bring the Snowflake data into the Data Cloud. I assume to cable it up to this substrate control object model that you've described.
Yes.
And that's what was your role back then?
Yeah, that was me as an OEM architect at Snowflake. Really a lot of education with the partner team. We released and announced like this big integration at Dreamforce 2022. We had a really cool booth there. We had a ski lift that would go up and down this mountain, and we had a button where we could hit a button and snow would come out of the top of this mountain and fall down over the ski lift. It was really cool. That booth was crazy. We had whiteboard tables, and there's so much interest in this.
Right.
Because if I think about the sheer volume of data that can be in a Snowflake table,
Right, it's massive.
I mean, trillions of records.
Right.
And I think about like my phone and how much data that thing throws when I'm using applications or just the phone itself.
Right.
That telemetry is so many events, and you would want to load a billion rows of telemetry into Salesforce to make decisions on. You're already behind on the gravity of that, just the physical nature of putting a billion
the data
rows
has
there,
mass. I
and
don't
then
wanna
a billion
move it
rows,
around.
and a billion rows. No, but leave it where it's the source of truth. And the source of truth for that kind of data, that telemetry, is in Snowflake's, Databricks, or even open source data lakes with Parquet over Iceberg. And because this Parquet over Iceberg format started becoming really, really popular, this Iceberg is a catalog or a manifest of what files on my S3 system or my Azure storage or my Google storage make up this table at this point in time. So you have all these millions of tiny little files called micropartitions or Parquet files that'll make up a data table with this manifest that tells me at this point in time, these files make up this table. And so the data world has started standardizing on Iceberg as an open table format that everyone can use.
Across all the cloud storage platforms.
Yes, across all of them. So we were able to invest heavily within Iceberg. Snowflake made Iceberg tables a native thing, and you could just point Snowflake at an Iceberg catalog, and now we have an external table. And this external table now can be leveraged by Snowflake Compute, or in the case of Data Cloud, we can actually issue a query directly to the Snowflake layer to pull that data back as we need it. I call them nibble queries, right? If I
Yes, I
pull
need a
up
little bit.
Keith inside of my Salesforce console on my individual, I can then see your event telemetry right there. What is your history? How long have you been a customer? What's your lifetime value? What segments are you in? And if I want to go, hey, what is he doing with my application? What are you doing with my company? What is your level of engagement? Now I can issue queries. Hey, give me the last 2 weeks of engagement for Keith down into a Snowflake table. And that could be billions of records, but I'm going to pull back the 5,000 that relate to you.
You're going to run a narrow query just for me.
That is
Okay, so there's
correct.
something I'm confused about because you described Data Cloud is the pan Snowflake substrate of data for all of the different Snowflake clouds. It centers around this concept of a controlled object model,
Yep.
right? And you described early on in the conversation that controlled object model is extensible, which is quite nice.
Yes.
Right, like I need a new column, I can just add it in this one place. I don't need to manually go back and manually manage and maintain the entire stack. But then there's this other data out here in this GCP place or in this Snowflake place, and thanks to this Parquet, zero copy, Iceberg protocol, I can be working in my Snowflake kind of context, but want to query this deeper telemetry data or deeper Snowflake data that's got mass.
Yep.
And I don't want to move that stuff, so I can get to those things within the context of the customer, Keith in this example, to see that other data. The thing that I'm confused about is there any reason for a customer who's got Snowflake data, who's using Tableau, to be doing any of this if they aren't in this Salesforce Customer 360 ethos? Right, like if I'm not a Salesforce Customer 360 kind of use case, is there something to do this data cloud layer for me? Because what it sounds like is there's a lot of translation. You had described when we were talking last night that there's a little bit of like SQL gen that's happening, and I'm curious about that, where you're doing a little bit of the old school Tableau thing, where you're dynamically generating SQL and doing translation from the object model, from the query to the object model, and then from the object model to whatever this cloud data is, right? So there's a lot of moving parts there, and evidently you're cabling up these pipelines that have utility for the Snowflake use cases. Is there any reason for a Tableau Snowflake customer who isn't doing the Customer 360 thing to be considering Data Cloud as a solution to their needs?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that in kind of two parts.
Okay.
And the first part is just talking a little bit deeper about zero copy, and I'll talk about the specific scenario you just laid out there. And so as I'm creating Salesforce objects, that then allows things that are in the Salesforce platform to work. We have this thing called Apex and Flow and Socal. That's how things get moved and orchestrated through our system. And a table in Snowflake is not an object to Salesforce without Data Cloud in the middle.
I've got to do some kind of mapping there.
Yes.
I got to take my table in Snowflake and map it onto this object.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can do that mapping. It's really quick. It's a couple clicks of a mouse. You can create new objects directly from the table with one click of a mouse. It's really slick. So when we issue Salesforce commands to the object, it then translate that to SQL to execute against on Snowflake,
and that's that SQL
Redshift.
generation
that
piece.
SQL generation piece. And in the near future, for all of these zero copy connectors, we can issue queries, or we can issue get statements and retrieve statements to the actual files themselves with a file federation, as opposed to just query federation.
To those little nibbits of files that are in the inventory.
Yeah, so if you have your own lakehouse, you could bring your own Iceberg even. You don't even need a Redshift, you don't need a Databricks, you don't even need a Snowflake. We're able to get the data that way too, with this context we gave it when we mapped it in and gave it relationships back to the core Salesforce objects. I typically say to people, you probably shouldn't have your data in Data Cloud unless it extends a Salesforce object, or gives us some way of doing a semantic search across unstructured documents to give generative AI or people using the platform some context, right? I really want to extend what's going on with the work that flows through Salesforce's Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, Marketing Cloud, et cetera. But now that we're investing so heavily in Data Cloud to deliver these really interesting use cases with customer data, generative AI, and agents, we're investing heavily in this data layer and database layer. And if you start peeling back some of the layers of what it really is, we're built on Tableau DNA. The hyper engine itself executes within Data Cloud when you're a Data Cloud customer or a Tableau Next customer. If you're a Tableau server customer or desktop, that's still local on your hardware.
That's on your prem.
That's still on your stuff. But when you're into Data Cloud now, that hyper layer is now part of what is Data Cloud. It's one of our many, many, many services, right? Because we have unstructured data, structured data, we have transforms, we have segmentation, we have identity resolution. They all use little bits of different technology. And so as a Tableau customer that has just Snowflake, you'd probably be just using regular Tableau or a Tableau Online, going directly to Snowflake.
On Snowflake. Right.
But now that we're starting to look at extracts and the way extracts all relate to each other, so these hyper extracts, and they have business context, now we want to start giving it semantics. And as we start giving it semantics, that semantic engine, that semantic layer, that lives within Data Cloud. So if you become a Tableau Next customer, yes, you will be a Data Cloud customer because that semantic tier is built within Data
Next.
Cloud, in Data Cloud from Tableau Next. And what I like about where we're going with this, if the analyst creates something new in the semantic layer, they create a new calculation, a new metric, because it's living on Data Cloud now, when things live on Data Cloud, it's an object that's accessible to the entire Salesforce ecosystem. So if you move from being just a Tableau customer to a Commerce Cloud customer, to a Service Cloud customer, a Sales Cloud customer, some of the analytics that you've already done through Tableau Next, those will be available as objects for Data Cloud that you can then go and orchestrate inside of Salesforce, right? If I get a value to a certain level, or there's a new record in an extract, right? Now I can go trigger automation inside of the Salesforce platform, or use that in context with the rest of the data I know about Keith to give stuff to agents. So any work you do there could be usable by the Salesforce platform in the future, because it's an object that lives on Data Cloud. When it's an object on Data Cloud, it is Salesforce first party and can be used in the rest of our clouds that are on Hyperforce.
Got it. Okay, so what I'm getting is that there might not be immediate use case for me if I'm just a Tableau customer and I'm just using Salesforce. I can cable those things up directly. However, as the landscape evolves, what I'm seeing is a bit of an easier on-ramp to consider becoming a user of one of those Salesforce offerings, especially because I'm really glad that you focused on the context for AI. This is one of the questions that I really was thinking about wanting to ask you, because, I mean, obviously, context is super important when you work with an AI. And we're seeing in the keynote that we can use VDS at the moment to run Gen AI queries against the data that's in a published data source from even a local Tableau server. However, to me, this doesn't really kind of address the root problem, because there's a lot of published data sources on a Tableau server. And even if I could run Gen AI on each of them, I'm not going to ask my end user to have 30 different conversations with 30 different chatbots.
Yeah.
I really want that context to be in one central, well-modeled location, which is where the semantics comes in, which is where the data modeling comes in. And so what I'm hearing from you, correct me if I'm putting the pieces together wrong, is I'm a Tableau Snowflake. I have nothing to do with Tableau Next. I have nothing to do with Tableau with the data cloud. However, increasingly there's going to be benefit for me because, for example, I could bring in my unstructured stuff, which was also a part of the keynote, and I can mix and match my structured data that's in Snowflake with my unstructured stuff, and I can use Tableau Next and Data Cloud in order to do that, and I'm still not kind of making use of the Salesforce offerings. I may not even be making use of this kind of object model, so to speak, but this ability to run the AI within a context that has my structured and my unstructured data stitched together now has brought me into the Data Cloud environment. It's brought me into the Tableau Next environment. And I think what I heard you say is that work then sets me up, if I wanted to then take advantage of one of the other Salesforce offerings or one of the other Salesforce clouds, that original work would not be lost. It would actually be setting me up to do that. Did I get it right?
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. And that's what I like about Tableau Next, is now the Analyst is a generator of real data and objects that live beyond just the dashboard. Right, these concepts can now flow into other areas of business process automation. Right, I can automatically create a case. I can automatically create an opportunity just based on where it is in that context, which is really slick. And as we build these relationships up in the semantic model about how all of this data relates back, if I ever open up like a data cloud and show you, there's relationships, like almost a flood of them, to two objects, to account and to individual, because those are the two things we are always doing in a Salesforce org, is working with those two things. And all the data relates there. So there's a graph of those relationships for how it all relates. And so when Agentforce is in there working with that context model, that metadata context model, it knows how to walk through all of those different relationships to pull back data. And in the prompt interface, as I'm building prompts, I can grab the related data and just drop it right in the prompt builder in plain language. It's a very low code way of building these AI building blocks that can then go up even further into a full Agentforce context in our Agentforce composer. So it's really slick to see the Analyst being a first-class citizen within this ecosystem, and their work through Tableau Next and the semantic model can be exposed up with those relationships to where people are doing the work, and they can interrogate that. They can ask it questions through Agentforce on the right hand nav when you click that little Agentforce button. It's really slick to see it all coming together into one spot where people go to work.
Okay, super. I mean, I feel like I'm far more educated than I was a moment ago about what is this data cloud thing, what is this Tableau Next thing. So I'm super rewarded that you've given me that. I've got two more questions, I think. One is, it sounds like there's a lot of translation going on, right? Is it going to perform well? Because I've got all of that stuff. I know we're running a very narrow query against the very deep data to get only the telemetry for Keith, but it's way over there on that other cloud. And so my question number one is it going to perform well? Because there's a lot of adapters, right? There's translation that's happening from my in situ data, where it is, to get it onto this substrate object model that's the foundation of the data cloud. Question number one, is it going to perform well? Question number two, it sounds kind of high maintenance, if I can be honest, because I got my start in SAP, so my original career was SAP infrastructure guy, and anybody who's been around ERP implementations for a long time knows that that standard object model is not applicable to a massive enterprise.
Yep.
It's a starting point.
Yeah.
It's a great place
It's
from
a-
which
it's a
to
good-
get started, but there's also an army of consultants and contractors and engagements and implementations that ultimately wind up customizing the standard way that Salesforce or SAP or the ERP vendor has envisioned that this is the way CRM works or supply chain management works, or this is the way that ERP functions. So question number one, is that in situ thing with all of its cabling up and adapters and translations going to actually perform? And question number two, I'm really getting, again, we can't escape it, the importance of modeling.
Yep.
Right? It sounds like the modeling has got to be there, because regardless of the customer that I'm on, whether they do a few customizations to that standardized model, probably if it's a large organization, they'll do many customizations to that standardized model. The clarity and quality with which those customizations and that modeling occurs at the beginning, I think is likely to set up that customer for success or high maintenance failure later. But these are my two questions. Is it going to perform?
Yep.
And is it going to be high maintenance? And how do I avoid it being high maintenance?
Yeah, definitely. Well, just the performance one first. So inside of Data Cloud is that hyper Tableau DNA. And so at any point, if
Wicked fast database.
Yeah, just blazing fast. I mean, the way it handles queries, it blows my mind. I remember when I was in London still for Tableau, I built a 7 billion row extract and was just issuing queries real time. Boom, 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 boom.
But specifically what I'm talking about is the in situ stuff, because we've got the hyper, that's fast, but now I got to go over to Snowflake through all these translations.
Yeah, so we have, this JDBC connector to issue queries down into Snowflake with that context awareness. So that context awareness is very important. So as we issue the queries out of segments, issue the queries out of related list on pages, it's going to have that context and be these nibble queries. Now there might be some things where we want the full payload of data to create a data graph that we persist, to do identity resolution because things could change so often. And so right now we have the ability to accelerate that data, which would actually ingest it on a scheduled basis into Data Cloud, and it would live within Hyper itself.
Okay, so
there is a way to get it
on
there.
occasion, if I need it, I can take an extract.
Yes, you can.
I can bring it local into Data Cloud. Okay.
And we are investing in making those other areas of the Data Cloud service that requires more data than just the nibble to have that relationship be a lot faster, as opposed to just a select star and then stream a whole bunch of tuples, right? We might be able to move into an unload mode where we take the query result set and we push it out to 1,000 little files, and in parallel we ingest all 1,000 files so that data is there in a few minutes instead of a few hours. So we are working on that as an engineering team. Our engineering team is just amazing. We have more people building it than are actually out there selling it right now. And so we're very spoiled to have that level of Salesforce's captive audience, but Salesforce's innovation and team behind what we're doing. So there may be spots where it's not performant. We are working towards it. And then there are ways that we can be creative to make it performant.
So nibble it first, and then that's a boatload of data. We're going to deal with it
differently. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then for the object model and being high maintenance, I look at any Salesforce implementation, it's always customized. And that extensibility, right? I'll go all the way back to my early example. I needed to know the Topaz unit for my dealerships when I was working for this e-contracting provider. And I was able to extend my model to add that little thing, right? As you're working with Data Cloud, we have these things called data kits and data bundles. And so I can bring over all of your objects with all of those customization fields with clicks. Just clicks of a mouse, because we know you've extended that model, right? Everyone has extended that model to meet their business needs. And so we're doing that through a low code fashion. And then we have data bundles around different industries, say health cloud, financial services cloud, automotive cloud. Those models will come in as well if you are a member.
So these are starter
kits.
Clouds.
Yeah, they're great
I'm
starter
in this
kits.
industry. I get to begin from this model.
But you've already been using it because you have Service Cloud or Sales Cloud. You've already extended it. So you don't have to do additional customization into Data Cloud. As you bring the data in and map it, it'll map to what you've already extended to, which is really, really slick. And you do that with clicks, not code. And then as third parties start to make opinions about certain agentic workflows or certain analytics workflows within an industry or vertical specialization, they'll be able to publish to our marketplace a data kit that you can download and install on your Data Cloud with a few clicks of a mouse. And
I can go buy that package.
You can go get access to that package. Same thing with agents. There will be an agent framework or agent marketplace where that agent will have certain prompts and things it will do, but in order to be effective, it wants a data model that supports the questions it's trying to ask. So you'll have the agent payload and this data bundle that supports it, and you'll map some of your data into these objects that this agent then uses, and then customize it from there. So we're always going to give you a starting kit, a place to start from, as opposed to open a screen and there's a blank canvas and I just start writing code.
Oh my God, the worst thing is an empty canvas. But I guess where I'm coming from is just, if there's one takeaway for me, it's a reinforcement of my thesis that modeling is so important.
It is key to what we do.
Modeling is so important. And right now, so many data leaders out there have just a lot of chaos going on in their environments.
Oh yes.
They haven't invested in governance, and they haven't invested in tidiness. They haven't invested in getting a good, solid data model that represents the business questions that they want to ask, the business questions, the data that they have, and stitching those things together in relational ways. And so, if anything, that's my key takeaway, because getting that modeling right is not only going to minimize the cost of ownership with the high maintenance going forward, it's also going to maximize the applicability of those agents that you're bringing in, and it's going to really optimize that performance question that I was asking. And so to me, I don't know, you correct me if am I getting it wrong, or is there anything else that's more important than being accurate with that model?
Yeah, when we look at Data Cloud in any presentation, we always show this visualization of a whole bunch of bubbles and how they relate to each other.
Right,
because
and
that's
from a
the
helicopter
relationship.
view, it seems easy.
Yeah, and that's the relationships, and that's what we're always trying to establish. How do these keys and things all relate back? So as I want this nugget of data, it knows how to go get it.
Right.
And as you invest in the analyst creating data sets to answer specific questions, right, inside of Tableau, specifically Tableau Next, that extract, that model, lives in Data Cloud. And we can relate it back to the customer, because I made this specific hyper extract or this specific Tableau data source to answer this question. That's now an object on Data Cloud, and I can relate it back into this larger thing of data, this full payload of data we have living in Data Cloud, and then use it elsewhere downstream, which is pretty slick. It's really cool to see this coming together. It's a really interesting point in time to be working here at Salesforce, and specifically on the Data Cloud team that allows a lot of this magic to happen. I always tell people, well, David, what do you do at Salesforce? Well, I'm a distinguished architect for data and AI. Well, what does that mean? Well, I make the plumbing. Right? No one cares about the plumbing
Until it doesn't work.
until you turn the faucet on and brown water comes out, or it doesn't come out at all.
Right.
And so yeah, that's why you don't always hear a lot about Data Cloud, but what it enables is, man, I can get that refreshing data where I need it, when I need it, fit for purpose.
Yep.
Which is really slick.
I can stay hydrated.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so, just to make sure that I got it right, is it seamless? I've invested in that analyst, they've modeled that hyper extract in their Tableau environment. Is it seamless, the transport of that modeling of Tableau relationships and the data model in Tableau over into Data Cloud? Is that current day a seamless move?
Yeah, with Tableau Next, it is an object.
With Tableau Next.
With Tableau Next.
Tableau Next.
It
it's
is
a
an
seamless
object
move.
on Data Cloud.
But so if I'm in cloud, right? Like if I wanted to take my business, I've got my business models in Tableau Cloud. I can't do that. I have to be on Next.
I wouldn't say you can't. What you would typically do in this case is an embedded dashboard that answers that question with the dashboard in mind. And then we send in a question mark, customer equals Keith, right? And it would filter down to that context. So it would just be integrated in a different pattern, and it wouldn't be as reusable as it is once it's in Data Cloud.
Right. And this I'm picking up is the main benefit, and what the strategic initiative is behind Next is to get onto this new paradigm that leaves behind some of the architectural baggages of what was constructed 20 years ago with the original Tableau that we grew up with. So I'm getting it now.
Yeah, and it'll really help combat extract proliferation, right?
Yeah.
And because we can build these semantic models on top of many extracts and look for the semantic first,
Yeah.
before not just connect and go. Of course, you always can do that. That's one of Tableau's biggest strengths. But let's look to see if someone else has answered this question. Oh, they have. I'm going to start from there.
Yeah, begin from there. Okay, this has been a great conversation. Thank you, David.
Well, thank you so much, Keith.
Data Cloud 101. I think I'm getting it.
I think we got probably more of a 201.
Yeah, we unpacked a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, you know how deep I like to go.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
What you
it.
do now. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Let's make sense of this.
Let's make sense.